Guys, relax. It's only halftime.
Hades is one of the easiest Disney villains to enjoy, which is exactly the problem. He's too funny to trust. He walks into a scene like the most entertaining person in the room. Fast talk, big smile, perfect timing. Every insult wrapped like a joke. Every threat delivered like customer service. And because he's funny, we let him get close. But underneath the comedy is something much older. Resentment. Hades doesn't just want power. He wants the gods above him to feel, for 1 second, what it felt like to be stuck below them. That's why Hades is impossible to hate. Not because he's harmless, because he turns a wound into entertainment. And if we're honest, that makes him uncomfortably familiar. In Hercules, Hades is introduced as the god of the underworld. That matters, because Hades isn't just evil in a random way. His whole identity is built around position. Zeus is above, Hades is below. The gods celebrate in the light, Hades manages death in the dark. And the movie makes a very clever choice. It doesn't make Hades slow, gloomy, or obviously miserable. It makes him funny. He talks like a salesman. He moves like a manager who's had too much coffee. He smiles like he has already forgiven you for disappointing him, even though he absolutely has not.
What? Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
That's the trick. Hades doesn't look like resentment at first. He looks like charisma. He's not sitting alone saying, "I feel overlooked." He's joking, performing. He's keeping the room moving so no one has time to notice how much he hates being in it. And that's why he works so well. Because we've all met some version of this. The person who's hilarious at dinner, but every joke has a blade in it. The colleague who makes everyone laugh, then quietly remembers every promotion they didn't get. The friend who says, "Relax, I was joking," after saying the one thing they clearly meant. Hades is funny, but his comedy is not just personality, it's camouflage. Villains don't become monsters overnight. They follow a sequence of psychological decisions. A playbook. A wound becomes a rule. A fear becomes a strategy. A strategy becomes a personality. And Hades follows one of the most recognizable playbooks of all. Charm, hiding resentment. Step 1. Resentment becomes charm. This is the first thing Hades teaches us. Some people don't hide resentment by becoming silent. They hide it by becoming entertaining. They learn how to be quick, how to be useful. They learn how to make the room laugh before the room can reject them. Hades has that energy in almost every scene. He rarely just says what he feels. He packages it. He turns frustration into rhythm, insult into timing, rage into performance.
I know, I got it. I got the concept. So, let me just ask.
That busyness matters. Because Hades isn't charming like someone who's at peace. He's charming like someone trying to outrun what he feels. He doesn't let silence sit for too long. Silence would be dangerous. In silence, resentment has no costume. So he fills the air. Jokes, snide remarks, fake warmth. And every so often, the mask slips.
Rearrange the cosmos. And the one schlemiel who can louse it up is waltzing around in the world!
This is what makes Hades so satisfying to watch. The movie lets us see the machinery. He's funny, then furious. Furious, then funny again. It's not randomness. It's emotional temperature control. He burns hot, then cools himself down because the joke is more useful than the explosion. And this is where the mirror gets uncomfortable. because charm can be generous. But charm can also be a way of keeping score without looking like you're keeping score. Someone can be the funniest person in the group and still be the most wounded person in the room. Sometimes the joke isn't there to connect. Sometimes the joke is there so nobody asks the real question. Are you actually okay? With Hades, the answer is obvious. No, he is not okay. He's just very good at making not okay sound entertaining. Step 2. Being overlooked becomes personal. This is the wound underneath the performance. Hades doesn't simply dislike Olympus. He feels insulted by it. The gods aren't just above him geographically. They're above him socially, emotionally, symbolically. They get the party, the light. They get the family image. Hades gets the basement of existence.
Well, they're just fine. You know, a little dark, a little gloomy, and as always, hey, full of dead people. What are you gonna do?
And he smiles through it. That is a very specific kind of pain. It's not just, I want what they have. It's, how dare they enjoy having it while I'm down here. That's why Hercules becomes more than a tactical problem. Yes, Hercules is the threat to Hades' plan, but emotionally, Hercules is worse than that. Hercules is loved, celebrated, protected. Hercules receives naturally the kind of belonging Hades cannot stop resenting. And when someone is already carrying resentment, another person's joy can feel like an attack. That's the human part. A friend's success becomes proof that you were forgotten. A sibling's praise becomes evidence that your parents never saw you. Someone else's easy confidence becomes unbearable because it reminds you how long you've been performing. So instead of saying, I feel unseen, the wounded person says, must be nice. And everyone laughs because it sounded like a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a confession wearing sunglasses. This is where Hades becomes more uncomfortable, because the most dangerous thing about him is not the anger, it's how well he edits the anger. The red flames are not the real warning, the jokes are, because a joke can get into the room before the truth is allowed in. A joke can say, I hate you, and still deny it. A joke can punish someone while pretending nothing happened. A joke can test how much cruelty people will forgive if the delivery is good enough. That's Hades. He's not lovable because he's safe. He's lovable because he makes danger feel socially acceptable. Step 3. The wound becomes too useful to give up. This is where Hades stops being just funny and becomes dangerous, because resentment gives him more than pain. It gives him a reason to scheme, to punish, to manipulate, a reason to believe that if he hurts people, he's not being cruel, he is correcting the balance. That's the hidden benefit of resentment. It can make revenge feel like justice, and Hades is very good at turning people into instruments of that justice. Look at how he treats Meg.
Meg.
Speak of the devil.
Meg, my little flower, my little bird, my little nut. Meg.
He doesn't approach her like a cartoon tyrant every second. He talks to her like someone who knows her. He's casual, familiar, almost friendly. But the warmth is not freedom. It's ownership with better manners. That's what makes his charm so dangerous. He doesn't always need to force people immediately. He can invite them into a deal that already favors him. He makes manipulation feel conversational. Pressure feels witty. Exploitation feels like banter. And because he's funny, the audience enjoys watching him do it. That is not an accident. That is the whole design of Hades. He shows us how charm can soften the edges of resentment until resentment becomes entertaining enough to excuse. We see it with pain and panic too. They're not just henchmen. They're emotional punching bags in a workplace comedy from hell. That rhythm matters. If he were only cruel, we would reject him faster. But he's cruel and funny, so we stay. And that's very real. A boss can humiliate someone in a meeting, get a laugh, and call it culture. A friend can keep making small cuts and hide behind the fact that everyone else is laughing. A family member can turn old bitterness into comedy until nobody knows how to challenge it without looking too sensitive. And that's how the wound becomes useful. It gives Hades permission to keep acting like the victim while making everyone else pay rent inside his resentment. And the worst part is this: if Hades ever let go of the resentment, he would lose the story that makes him feel justified. He would have to admit that being overlooked hurt him, not annoyed him, not inconvenienced him, hurt him. That is a much more vulnerable sentence, and Hades does not do vulnerable. He does charming, he does furious, he does funny, but he does not do honest pain. By the final act, Hades thinks he's found the perfect deal. Take away Hercules' strength, release the Titans, overthrow Olympus, reverse the humiliation. For Hades, this isn't just a plan. It's emotional reimbursement. The universe finally owes him. But then Meg makes a choice Hades can't control. She sacrifices herself for Hercules. And suddenly, Hades' whole understanding of people becomes unstable. Because Hades understands deals, he understands leverage, resentment. He understands what people will do when they're hurt, trapped, desperate, or angry. But he doesn't understand love that costs something. He doesn't understand someone choosing vulnerability without using it as a transaction. This is the moment where Hades could have seen the truth. Strength is not the opposite of weakness. Love is not just a weakness to exploit. And being below others does not give him permission to destroy everything above him. But accepting that truth would cost him too much. It would mean admitting that his entire war was not noble. It was wounded. It would mean admitting that all the jokes, all the deals, all the rage, all the planning were not just strategy, they were armor. So Hades does what wounded charmers often do when the mask stops working. He keeps talking. Even when he's losing, he tries to bargain. Even when he's exposed, he tries to perform. Even when the truth is in front of him, he reaches for the joke. That is the tragedy of Hades. He's not doomed because he never saw the truth. He's doomed because accepting the truth would make his whole resentment meaningless. And without resentment, who is he? Just someone who was hurt, someone who felt unseen, someone who turned being left out into a personality. That is a much quieter story, and Hades would rather burn than be quiet. Most people do not release Titans. They don't try to overthrow Olympus, but they do hide resentment in charm. They become funny before they become honest. They make the room laugh before anyone can ask why they're angry. They turn jealousy into sarcasm, disappointment into banter. Then one day, someone says, "That sounded harsh." And they say, "Relax, I was joking." Maybe they were. But maybe the joke was the only place the truth felt safe enough to appear. That's why Hades is impossible to hate. Because he's not just the villain who makes us laugh. He's the warning that sometimes the funniest person in the room isn't harmless. Sometimes they're just the best at hiding the fire. Hades shows us what happens when resentment learns to smile.
In the beginning, there was only ocean. Until the mother island emerged, Tefiti. Her heart held the greatest power ever known. It could create life itself. And Tefiti shared it with the world.
But next time, we're looking at a character who does the opposite. No charm, no jokes, no performance to soften the pain. Just a wound so old that everyone forgot there was ever a heart underneath it. Next episode, Teka and Tefiti, the most misunderstood Disney villain and the question hidden inside her rage. Who hurt her? If you want to keep going, watch the episodes on Scar, Lotso, and Tai Lung next. Each one shows a different way pain becomes a playbook. Scar turns resentment into strategy. Lotso turns rejection into control. Tai Lung turns entitlement into revenge. Subscribe to Your Hidden Playbook for more hidden patterns inside the characters you thought you already understood. Because the story is familiar, the pattern is not.